You know, I was always told it's one thing to know about something and it's a different thing to know something. So today, what I'm going to go ahead and go over is just the basics of packing and basic packing mentality in accordance with priorities of work. What are these priorities of work? Well, we'll get into that. Stay tuned. So in the military, whenever we're getting an assignment, deployment orders, or whatever, what have you, one of the first things that we do is mission analysis. And with that mission analysis, we define what is our role in this particular mission. And one thing that entails, well, a couple things that entails is, you know, the who, what, when, where, and why, or the mission statement. And so part of that is, you know, where are we going? What are we doing? When are we doing it? And why are we doing it? And that kind of helps to drive our understanding of how our unique specific role fits within that. And so we can plan, train, and pack accordingly. And one of my roles on my detachment was I had to come up with the packing list. And I had a systematic approach to it because, like, let's face it, I'm not the smartest guy. There's a lot of people who are plenty smarter than I am and probably have way better ideas than I do. But the fact of the matter is that I'm a simple person, and I just have a simplistic approach to it. Now, some of you guys who have been a part of this bushcraft survival stuff for 100 years have probably heard of the 5 or 10 C's. I personally had never heard of that until a month ago. Wild, right? But the 5 C's, of course, is, you know, your containers and your cordage and your cover and your all this other stuff, right? See, I don't even know what they all are. But the way that I go about packing, I end up kind of doing it all anyways. And it's just the way that I go about it. And I'm going to share that with you. And maybe it'll make sense and maybe it won't. But at least you'll be able to see why I do the things that I do and the way that I do things. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get my whiteboard refreshed. So first of all, what are priorities of work? Priorities of work, where I come from, is that it's the order of sequence that has to get done before another thing happens, almost like an algorithm. And so when my team would go out on a mission, whether it's training or whatever, you know, we know that once we hit this, we have to do this, and we have to do this, we have to do this. Or when we hit a patrol base, you know, the first thing is always security, and then, you know, weapons maintenance, and then food hygiene, and then rest, right? Been a few years if I got that wrong, my bad. But security is always first, and then weapons, and then everything else. And so those are the priorities of work, meaning that you don't get to do anything else until this is done. In a survival situation, though, priorities of work isn't necessarily like that because it's all situation dependent, right? And so, for example, my priorities of work whenever I do anything, plan for anything, a survival situation, whether I'm going hunting, hiking, camping, whatever, is the first thing I always think about is fire. Fire is the most important thing to me, which is why I have a lot of videos on how to make fires, and I practice making fires, because without fires I can't signal, I can't cook, I can't purify water, I can't stay warm, I can't defend myself against predators, etc. Okay, so fire is very important. However, you might be in an area where it's 1,000 degrees and the last thing you need is a fire. Okay, you might need, according to my priorities of work, what's next is shelter. Maybe you need to get out of the environment immediately. So you need to think about shelter. Maybe there's a storm coming, or maybe it's blazing hot, or it's freezing cold, what have you. So you need to get out of the elements so that you don't die from exposure. The next is I prioritize water over food. And the reason for that is, of course, you can survive a lot longer without food than you can without water, and especially a guy like me can last a lot longer than, you know, some folks. So that's my priorities of work. And I know that's going to be similar to other people's as well, because it's just a logical thing, right? But with that being said, it's one thing to know about something, and it's another thing to know something. So with fire, you know, you need to maybe think about natural and artificial means of fire making. And so what that means is that your fire triangle, right? You need to understand your fire triangle. How do you make a fire, right? Heat, fuel, oxygen. You need to understand how to build a tinder bundle, fuel source, etc. And then shelter, of course, being natural and artificial as well, whether you're doing debris huts or just tarp shelters. And then water, and then food. But understanding, you know, charcoal filtration, boiling, solar disinfecting, distilling water, natural and artificial means of filtration, and boiling, right? And so you can pack things according to that. And then food, you know, depending on how long you're going out, you can either just bring the food with you, like MREs or what have you, or, you know, learn how to make some traps, learn how to fish, learn how to do these things. And with that being said, shelter, water, food, fire, that'll tell you, you know, I'm gonna need, you know, for food, if I'm gonna do snares, I'm gonna need some wires, or I'm gonna need some paracord. Shelters, I'm gonna need some cordage so that I can do my wrap and fraps and whatever. Water, I'm gonna need some iodine tablets, whatever, right? By knowing these priorities of work and understanding natural and artificial and what it all entails, you can start to break down, okay, these are possible items. Now it goes into length of time and time of year and whatever, and it'll start to funnel, right? Funnel all of this information into exactly what you need for your kit. I hope that makes sense. And I'll go over what's on my table to hopefully make sense a little bit better. But one more thing I wanted to talk about that's very important before we move on, okay? In the military, there was a thing that we used to say, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. And that just goes towards redundancy, right? If one fails, I have a backup. In order to accomplish my mission, if this one avenue fails, there's another avenue I can take in order to accomplish my mission, right? And so everything that I have in accordance with my priorities of work, I always put it with my PACE plan. And PACE plan stands for primary, meaning my primary source, my primary travel means, my primary fire, shelter, water, food, etc. And then I have alternate. If something here fails, I have an alternate. And then I have contingency. And if this fails, a contingency, and then if this fails, emergency, right? Primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency, okay? Redundancy, more than one ways to skin a cat. If I put everything in my rucksack, everything in my backpack, or everything in my car, and I lose it, I'm done, right? So those are some things that mentally you need to think about when packing. And it sounds simple, but people mess it up all the time. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, because I see all the comments from the haters. I'm not Dave Canterbury. I'm not the gray bearded Green Beret. I'm not Donnie Dust. I'm not all of these really well known. I've never been on Alone, Naked and Afraid. What the hell do I know, right? Well, you're right. I'm not these people. You know, I don't have the caliber of support, whatever that these guys do. I don't have the wealth of knowledge that they have. Those guys are incredibly intelligent. But what I do have is I do have a lot of experience in the woods, and in a very like simplistic, like I think way of of going about it. We can learn from them on YouTube, and then we can take what they learn and we can practice it or whatever. Everybody has something to offer, and so for me, this is what I have to offer. If you don't like it, oh well. So again, starting with my first priority of work, I have fire. And so one of the things I never leave without, let me get this out of the way, is I never leave without a lighter, okay? And this lighter, I have a lanyard attached to it, so then I can connect it to a D-link or carabiner that's attached to my belt or my belt loop or my gear, so then I don't lose it, right? Also, it's orange, so if it falls, you can see it in theory. I also removed the child protectant band just to make it that much easier to light, and also if it goes out, I can spin this and still get a lot of that ferrocerium off of the little wheel there. And then around my lighter is just duct tape. Duct tape being an excellent fuel source, which I have plenty of other videos highlighting that. Okay, so this is in my pocket all the time. Another thing that I wear just because, well, I make them, and they're a useful tool. Also, I have the lighter, but then I also have in this package right here. That's in the package. This one's brand new. These are available on the website, but that's not what we're here to discuss. But it's just a fire starting necklace, right? You can put this on. Look all chic, look all cool, whatever. Fashionable piece, conversation starter. And then when push comes to shove, this is a brand new piece, so it might take a couple strikes. But then when push comes to shove, you can just throw some sparks with it and be able to start your fire. And so these two things are on me all the time. So then I always have fire starting material. Another useful tool, I don't have my wallet on me, but this is a Fresnel lens, and this is just a magnifying glass that's the size of a credit card, goes in my wallet. Put it in my wallet, forget about it. Another tool that I have is I'll have a ferro rod, just because ferro rod, whether this gets wet, what have you, it'll work and it'll help you start your fires. So if one should fail, this is another means. So obviously the lighter would be my primary means because I'm not a dummy. And then my alternate would probably be, my ferro rod. But not all ferro rods are created equal. There's these kind right here, which you can see down the middle right here. You have a ferro rod, but then all of this other stuff is magnesium. And so you can simply just take the backside of your knife, which we'll talk about here in a second. So you can just take the backside of your knife and scrape off a lot of this. Magnesium. Maybe I got enough. And then on the other side, you have your striker. Probably don't have enough for demonstration. There it goes. Okay. And then that magnesium will burn. Okay, but then that goes without saying that practice is incredibly important, right? Next is shelter. One thing I always bring with me is my trusty rusty poncho. Just because I was in the infantry and special forces, I'm kind of partial to poncho shelters. So I got a military style poncho, comes with me. It also keeps me dry and out of the rain. I can protect my equipment, etc. But something also is you have a tube tent from Survival Frog. This is pretty cool and useful. And then you can even use it with the old bivy. These are Mylar lined, like space blankets, so they keep you nice and toasty. And I will say that I tried out the tack bivy when I first got it, and I sweat my gonads off. And then this one was cool. I picked up at Cabela's, a Climate blow up sleeping pad. So when you're talking about your kit, I mean, none of that takes up that much room, right? And this tube tent, setting it up is like 8 feet long, and you can definitely fit yourself and your gear inside of it. Another tool you can use for shelter, of course, is paracord. Now, paracord, again, with redundancy, I have my paracord that I can use for my shelter making, but I also have a bundle of paracord on my person, in my pocket. So on my person now that we've talked about so far is I have a bundle of paracord. It's probably 50 feet or so. I have my lighter with tie down strap and with duct tape to help with fire starting. As you can see, that does not take up a whole lot of room in a pocket. Put that in my cargo pocket, what have you. And with that being said, if I get separated from my gear, obviously I'm not gonna have my poncho or my shelter there. So like I said before, natural and artificial means of doing things. But I'll have my paracord to assist in that endeavor. A couple of other useful tools that I used to bring with me, have them strapped to the ruck frame of my rucksack, is just some bungee cords. I'd have about a dozen or so bungee cords. And in lieu of a ridge line or using paracord, if I gotta set up and take down rapidly, I would just use bungee cords. You don't gotta worry about knots. You don't gotta worry about any of that sort. You just set up your bungee cords, and when it's time to go, you just undo it, and you're home free. And with that being said, tent stakes, instead of whittling down sticks or whatever, just bring some tent sticks. These are like 50 cents a pop. And I've even seen where people would use the plastic tent stakes because you can shave off the plastic there to help you with a fire starter, which is a brilliant idea, and I did not even think of that. Next is water, and there's several things you can do for water. When I was in the infantry, we didn't really learn or go over it, but when I was in special forces, I was introduced to iodine tablets, and never in my life tried it. Didn't believe in it, but man, did I get accustomed to it. I quickly learned, and these things are lifesavers, man. With that being said, when it comes to water, you want to make sure that you have a container source for your water, plus a container for the container. Reason is that, like, at least to me, is I can make like teas and stuff in this. I can cook with it, and I can't do that with the plastic, obviously. These life straws and these grails are really cool too. I have tried these, and I don't have any complaints. It is kind of unnerving going up to a gross body of water, because again, sometimes we don't get the water we want, sometimes we get the water we get. And it's a little unnerving when you fill this up and you press it and you start drinking it, right? Or you start sucking through it on the straw. So here's what I'll say to that, right? Regardless of where you get your water, and regardless of how you filter that water, either drop iodine into it, read the instructions, or boil it. You're never wrong overdoing it. Even if this says 99.9% of things are eradicated and removed, I'll put an iodine tablet in there to get rid of that other 0.001%, right? Another thing I like to carry with me, just because I sweat a lot, right? I can use this as a towel, wrap it around my head. This is 100% cotton, so I can make it, so with my fire making, I can make char material, but I can also use this as a filter. I can put this around my canteen, and pour water into my canteen, which I've used shirts, socks, whatever, in order to catch the large debris. So this is another useful handy dandy tool. And again, these are just things that you think about, multi-use functionalities. Now, all of this stuff, whether I'm making fires, I'm hunting, I'm building my shelter, I need cutting tools. On my person, I will have a multi-tool where I have my knives and I have a saw, and I'll have some pliers at a minimum. That's just me though. I have done many of things with just those three, first aid and survival-ish stuff wise. But anyways, that'll go in my purse, that'll go in my pouch here and be connected to my belt loop. So now again, I have my fire starter, I have a multi-tool, I have a lighter, and I have paracord, okay, on my person. Caveat to that, when you are considering what knives to wear or utilize with you, you need to understand the tang differences, okay? A multi-tool, you're not gonna be able, you could, but how long are you gonna be able to do it and how hard are you gonna be able to do it? Baton wood, really bore through wood, etc., because it's not a full tang knife. It's held in by like a rivet. So it's not gonna have the same strength or durability as a full tang knife. And another thing, when you're considering bushcraft knives and items to use for bushcraft, some of these knives, get it out. Some of these knives have rounded edges. And what these rounded edges prevent, or at least severely limit, is the activation of a ferrule rod. See that? Nothing's coming off, right? Now I could use the sharp end of my blade, but then I'll risk dulling my blade. Versus if I had a fixed knife with nice 90-degree spine, right? I can activate my ferrule rod. So also with a full tang knife, I can beat the hell out of this thing. I can bore through it, and the strength is going, the durability and the integrity of the knife is going to remain. Just for sake of conversation or just some recommendations, I always recommend bringing some gloves. I think it gives kind of like a false sense of like, you don't touch that kind of thing, but like I can now, if that makes sense. But also, like if you're going through the woods and there's a lot of like thorn bushes and whatever, you gotta kind of paw through. You're not gonna scratch the crap out of your hands. Locking carabiners, can't go wrong with a handful of these, man. Secure your gear so you don't lose it at a minimum. Some sort of first aid kit. First aid kit, you got a boo-boo kit. I have plenty of scars on my hands from hunting trips and whatever from, there's like 4 scars right here from knuckle busters and whatever, because I always end up bleeding somehow whenever I'm in the woods. But in addition to that, I got a tourniquet, I got some ace bandage, and there's a whole myriad of other things you can bring. The point though, if you're gonna bring something like a tourniquet, you better train yourself on how to properly apply a tourniquet, okay, so you don't do further damage. We could literally spend hours and hours and hours about what to talk about what to bring. But the fact of the matter remains, the way that my mind works is by focusing on those priorities of work. What I can do then is I can look at everything that I have and think about dual purposes or multi-purpose. So then it narrows down, remember, it funnels and narrows down what I need to bring. Nothing on this table will be useful to you if you don't know how to use it. If you don't know how to use it, you're wasting your time, but also you're going to overload yourself. When I was in the Army, it was not uncommon to carry 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 pound rucks that had clothes, that had gear, that had ammo, that had specialty equipment, radios, whatever, right? Stuff. So what you can imagine is if you have this rucksack and it's full of sleep systems and boots and change of clothes and 100 pairs of socks and wherever, you're gonna run out of room for a lot of other things. Or knowing what to bring that maximizes the potential of what it could be used for is incredibly important And you only do that by training and learning. If I can summarize this into just one statement, it would be the more you carry up here, the less you carry on your back. Said, I hope this was somewhat valuable to you. I hope this helped out a little bit to help at least get the wheels turning and the information where it needed to go. If you find content like this valuable, I would definitely appreciate at least liking the video. That'll help move it in the algorithm and get it to other people. Catch you on the next one.